Praise be Jesus Christ, now and forever. Last week I had the great honour and privilege of being invited to preach at the first Mass of a newly ordained priest. I will have been a priest myself for 28 years this November, and this was the first time I'd been asked to preach at a first Mass. Perhaps there was a reason for that, and I might not be invited again for another 28 years. If I used this week's Gospel Nugget to preach my entire homily, some of you may fall into a deep sleep, or your phone or your computer might die. I highlighted for the newly ordained Father Christopher the ancient ways of bringing God to people and the people to God, the ways of beauty, truth, and the good as a guide for his priestly ministry. In researching, as happens so often, I was struck by a particular phrase written by Pope Benedict XVI, and it's a small exploration of that line that we will examine this week. It's widely acknowledged, and we don't need statistical evidence, just the evidence of our eyes, that the Western world is rapidly becoming post-Christian. Following COVID, the dramatic effect on the Church is really only just being felt, that many church closures are not on the horizon, they're around the corner. Benedict XVI, addressing what was already far advanced when he became Pope, wrote that anyone entering the Church has to be aware that he is entering a separate, active, cultural entity. I think that's very profound and can be a real basis for effective evangelization. What was the preaching of the apostles, the first Christians, except the creation of a new and separate but active cultural entity called the Church? It seems possible to read it in two ways. In the first place, the physical act of entering the building of the Church. The non-believer, or rather the seeker after the truth, on physically walking into a church, should encounter a separate, active, cultural entity. Crossing the threshold of the church is leaving the mundane behind in the true sense of that word and entering a different reality. The building and everything in the church is to draw the worshipper into the heavenly realm, to speak of the things of heaven. When a church looks like a supermarket or a theatre, or even worse, is dual purpose, divided between what is called worship space and the kitchen, there's a problem. The supreme sense of that separate, active cultural entity will obviously be the central act of the church, the very reason the building exists, which is not a community centre, but the place for the celebration of the divine mysteries. That is where the seeker after the truth should be drawn upwards, elevated and enchanted, and enveloped in the mystery, for there is nothing wrong with mystery. However, Benedict also meant, I'm convinced, the other kind of entering the church, which is actually the experience of conversion. If our society is post-Christian, it is also not far from being anti-Christian, which is a logical step. Evangelization, obeying the great commission of the Lord to make disciples, will not come about by adapting the church to the culture, but by, as it always has, making the culture Christian. In this intermediate stage, which may go on for many decades, perhaps a century, where people must receive the gospel anew, that separate, active cultural entity must, if it is to be effective, be at this stage a real counterculture. The word active will encompass the creation of an authentic community built around the central act of worship, but doing so much more, the work of charity, beauty, truth and goodness. It's the work of all the baptized, not just the ordained, new priests like Father Christopher, or elderly men in their sunset years like me. We can offer to the world something ever ancient and ever new, the very heart of the gospel. Brethren, rejoice, be perfected, be comforted, be of the same mind, be at peace, and the God of peace and love will be with you.